Tēnā koutou koutou. Welcome everyone to the Otago Live webinar series. Today we're here to discuss the University of Otago's PhD and Research Master degrees. I'm Victoria McInerney. I'm going to be your MC today, alongside with my colleague, Sarah Ewing.
Kia ora.
And then we've got these fabulous panelists that are around me. First, I'd like to introduce Dr. Jenny Yant. Jenny, can you just briefly describe or introduce yourself? Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Kia ora, marualele, bula vinaka, talofa lava. Warm Pacific greetings wherever you're tuning in from. My name is Jenny. I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Zoology. And I've been in New Zealand now for about 8.5 years. I grew up in the US, did my undergrad, master's and PhD and a postdoc in the US before deciding to move to Dunedin. And it was a great decision that I made. My focus of my research is mostly on insect behavioral ecology. I study a lot of bees, wasps, ants, butterflies, beetles, etc. It's a lot of fun. I get to have opportunities to work with folks from the botany department, from the ecology program, from various programs in different departments, lots of opportunities for collaborations among students and staff, which I've been really, really thankful for since moving to Otago. So kia ora.
Thank you. And then I've got Mrs. Bronwyn Stevens from the Graduate Research School, manager there.
Kia ora. So I'm manager of the Graduate Research School, a role I've been in for about 1.5 years. I've been at the university for nearly 30 years, and I am a Dunedin girl. So quite passionate about the place.
Thank you, Bronwyn. And then we've got Professor Joel Tyndall from the Division of Health Sciences. Joel.
Kia ora, folks. My name is Joel Tyndall. I did my undergraduate at Monash University in Melbourne, did my PhD at University of Queensland in Brisbane, Australia. I moved countries, moved to Dunedin about 20 years ago, and I have a research program in drug discovery, and I'm based in the School of Pharmacy.
Thank you, Joel. And Dr. Rakesh Banerjee.
Thank you. Kia ora, I'm Rakesh. I'm originally from India. I just graduated with a PhD in cancer pathology. I started my PhD in Otago in 2019.
Thank you so much, Rakesh.
Okay, so moving on, we have a very busy hour coming up. So first of all, I'd like to introduce us, University of Otago. We are New Zealand's first university. For some of you who have started your PhD journey or research master's journey prior to last month, you may notice a change in our look and feel. We are delighted to have a new tohu or symbol, which is reflective of the Otago Harbour here in Dunedin, and our new te reo name, which reflects that we are a place of many firsts. So, as I said, packed agenda. So I'm just going to skim through this. We're going to start off with New Zealand, a little bit introduction to Dunedin, and then answer hopefully all of your questions today with our fabulous panel. And if we have time at the end for Q&A. So please sit back, listen, because I'm sure a lot of the questions that you have today will be answered with our fabulous guests and panel.
That reminds me, sorry, a little bit of housekeeping. Please use the Q&A box below to write your questions, but just don't do those questions right now. We do have a live staff, a whole live team behind the scenes that will be answering your questions, but sit back, relax, listen. I'm sure your questions are actually going to be answered by this fabulous panel of experts here today. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, we're going to start off with New Zealand and Dunedin. So delighted, if some of you may not know about Aotearoa New Zealand. We are a population of 5 million all up, and we have 3 languages. So English, which is the language that we're all taught in, but you will also see Te Reo Māori, that is our Indigenous language, and again reflected across lots of our different publications and on our website that you may see. And we also have New Zealand Sign Language. So you can see from our rankings, we are a very safe country and we're gender equal, and we are also the 11th happiest. So there's lots of smiles here, which you saw from the start today. So a great place to consider doing your postgraduate studies in. And it is very much embedded in New Zealand culture that we practice the Māori principles of manakitanga, which is hospitality, kindness, generosity, and support. So thinking about your future studies, why would you consider studying in New Zealand? So it's wonderful to have you here today because clearly there's an interest. But just to give you a quick overview, we have 8 universities in New Zealand. They are all public universities. It is very much a world-class education. This is where you will learn critical thinking, hands-on learning. You work collaboratively, and already our academic staff have touched on that, the collaborations across departments as well as divisions. And what you're here for today, there are excellent research opportunities and also international collaboration across all universities. So, and the one thing I'd also like to highlight is we were the first country to adopt a strict code of practice for the care of international students. So being international is a part of being in New Zealand, and you may from my accent, I'm originally from Scotland, migrated here 25 years ago, and it's a wonderful country to live in. So where are we located? We are in the lower part of the South Island. As reflected in our name, we are a place of many firsts. So first university in the country, and we are in the city of Dunedin, or in Te Reo Māori, Ōtepoti, and it is a wonderful university city. So we have a population of about 130,000, 25,000 of those are students. So it's an incredibly vibrant place to study, as well as the number of academic staff that we have here. We love it here. You can see that from the panel that you've just met. And we really have a great lifestyle. We're a small city, everything's accessible within 10 to 15 minutes driving, so very easy to get around and explore our beautiful backyard. And this gives you an overview of what our city looks like, just as a touch point to give you a bit of an indication. And some of our snapshots of city life. So that's enough about Dunedin and New Zealand, and now we're going to touch on why consider Otago.
Thank you, Sarah. So as Sarah pointed out, we are one of 8 government universities, and Otago was the first university to be established. We've been teaching students for about nearly 154 years now, and we're very proud of our QS World rankings, and we're ranked still as top 1% of universities worldwide. The student body is made up of international students and domestic students, and you can see there that we have a very high number of PhD students. Nearly 1,400 choose Otago to study in. Now, when we talk about Otago, we're talking about the main campus of Dunedin, but there are 2 other campuses as well that research students can go and study, and we will talk a little bit about that in future slides. And we are a very research intensive university, but we take our teaching very seriously, and with QS stars, we're 5-star plus, which shows the very good quality rating. So QS rankings, world rankings came out yesterday, and we're ranked 214, or the 2nd highest ranked university in New Zealand. I think this shows that we're a very well sort of diverse range of programs that are very highly ranked right across the university.
For sure.
So as I was saying before, there are 3 main campuses for graduate research. Dunedin is the majority of where students will come and study, but we do also have campuses in Christchurch and Wellington. So as I was saying before, we're very research intensive, and we might be at almost the bottom of the world. I think there's a small university in Patagonia that just beats us, but it doesn't matter that we're in the Southern Hemisphere, we are globally connected. And from the introductions of the academic staff here, it just shows you that you will be taught, supervised by not just New Zealand academics, but academics from around the world. And you may also be involved in research around the world as well from our partner universities.
Okay, moving now on to research at Otago. But I'm just going to touch on the sort of key academic divisions that we have here. So hopefully there's something for everybody online today. We have health sciences, science, business and humanities. And Professor Joel is going to talk about our research groups.
So we have quite a few different research areas and named research groups. This slide's showing our Centres of Research Excellence. So these are nationwide centres funded by the government, specifically our Doddswell Centre for Photonic and Quantum Technologies, centering around physics research, as well as Coastal Peoples Southern Skies. In addition to the national centres, we have research centres and research themes, and you can see an extensive list of differing areas of research. From my area, particularly in health science, the Heart Institute, there's Pain, One Health Aotearoa, Global Health Institute, neuroendocrinology, and a whole lot more there. And drilling down, there's more there. I think I've already mentioned Pain, Pacific Health, New Zealand Ocean Acidification Research, catchment management. So the areas are much varied and diverse.
Okay, so that gives you a touch point in some of our centres of research, but we have research collaborations across all of our departments and divisions as well. They're just some of the key ones. Okay, so on to research degrees.
Certainly. Bronwyn, would you like to touch on the different postgraduate qualifications there are?
Certainly. So we have at the top there, the doctoral degree, the PhD, which is a minimum of 3 years. Can take longer depending on how long it takes you to get through your research and your data collection. We also have a research thesis master's, so that's usually a 12-month. Some students can come in and do coursework and then onto their research. That would be minimum 2 years. We also have taught masters and postgraduate degrees, but our main focus today is on the research-based qualifications. We also have so our master's research is a 1-year program. It's thesis only, usually one supervisor, a great preparation for the PhD, and in some circumstances you can also possibly upgrade to the PhD after a minimum of 8 months of study. So there's more about the PhD, 3 to 4 year program. We talk about our average times later on, roughly 3.5 years. By thesis only, there aren't usually taught papers in the PhD, and you can see there it's single disciplined or interdisciplinary, and good preparation for becoming an academic if that is what you're after. We also have some professional doctorates. We've got the Declan Dent, the DMA, which is the musical arts, DBA, which is business one, and the ED, which is in education. So they're usually the coursework and research. They're 3 to 4 year programs, often with 1 or 2 years of papers, and then onto a thesis similar to a PhD thesis.
So some of the benefits of research students studying in New Zealand, and if you're not aware, is that if you come in and you're going to do a master by research, Immigration New Zealand allows you to work full-time while studying. And you're also eligible for a 3-year post-study work visa after graduation. So please, if you are applying for a research master, please check your visa conditions and look at the Immigration New Zealand website. For PhD students, you pay domestic fees. You're not paying international fees. Our New Zealand government subsidises you. If you have children between the age of 5 and 18, which is basically school years, then your children can go into New Zealand schools, government schools, and pay domestic fees only. You too will be able to work full-time while studying, and you are also eligible for the 3-year post-study work visa. But once again, please check Immigration New Zealand website and please check your visa conditions on your student visa.
Okay, moving now into the admission application process. So eligibility for admission and what we're looking for academic requirements.
So first of all, for a master's by thesis only, we really do need to see that you've got a bachelor's, completed a bachelor's with honours, either first or upper second class. Or if you've done a master's degree, you also need to, for a master's degree, you need to have a GPA of at least a B+. This is an Otago equivalent. They will also look at the research component of your either your honours degree or if you've done your master's as well. And that research component must be at least 25% of the full year workload. For PhD and for your research masters, when it comes to English language requirements, we're looking for an IELTS of 6.5 with no individual band below 6. We also take TOEFL 90 with a minimum writing score of 21, and there are other equivalent tests like PTE, which we also take. You can get a conditional offer. So you get a conditional offer on your academic requirements. And then with your conditional offer, you can then sit your English language exams, or we've also got English for Otago, which is done through the University of Otago Language Centre. But you must have an Otago conditional offer, first of all, before applying for English for Otago. So English for Otago is all internally assessed. It's about 15 weeks of preparation. If you pass your English for Otago, then our language centre sends the results to admissions, and then your conditional offer becomes unconditional.
And all of this information is available on our website under International, so you can check out all the English language tests that we accept.
Okay, so how do you submit your application? We don't have paper applications at Otago, it's all online. So you go to the website, and basically the first thing you need to do is there will be apply now buttons, but we're going to talk about this in more detail during the panel discussion. But the first thing is, whether it's a research master or a PhD, is you need to secure supervision. Then after you've secured supervision, you then make the formal admission application through eVision. That's your student portal. Then after you've made the formal admission, then you submit, having uploaded all your documents, and it takes you through, the application will take you through the questions of the documents that they're looking for, submit, and then there's a whole lot of sort of internal red tape that the Graduate Research School does. All right.
Okay, so now we're moving on to the question we probably get asked most often when we're speaking to students, is about postgraduate scholarships. Okay, so the University of Otago Doctoral Scholarship. I'm delighted to say that we have up to 164 of these. It's a fee waiver for 3 years, and you also get a living stipend of $32,544. Again, this information is available on our website, and there are sort of different things you have to do for this, but this, just to let you know that the scholarship panel meets quarterly now, so depending on where you are with your application process of when the actual outcome of the University of Otago scholarship is given. So, and then we've also got the University of Otago International Masters Research Scholarships, which Vic can explain much more eloquently than I can.
Not sure about that, but I'll give it a go. So as you can see, it says a fee waiver there, capped at domestic tuition fee. So that means, say, for example, the international fee for a master's research program is $37,000 and domestic is $7,000. So it is waived, that $7,000 is waived. So you'd still need to pay $30,000. But you are also given, as part of your scholarship, that stipend, that living fee of $18,000, just over $18,000, which is great, which means you probably don't have to do any part-time work on the side. You can concentrate on your research masters and getting that thesis in. We also have the Manaaki New Zealand scholarships. Now, these are not Otago scholarships, they're funded by the New Zealand government. The full scholarships covering tuition, living costs and flights, and we've got the list of eligible countries up there. For more information about the Manaaki New Zealand scholarships, please go online, Google Manaaki New Zealand scholarships, and there's more information there. But
Yeah.
basically the next application period will be February next year. They closed for 2025. So you'd be looking at coming to study 2026, and they open very early next year.
But there's also lots of other funding opportunities depending on your home country and where you're from. Certainly for myself, I look after the region of Indonesia, and you've got your LPD scholarships as well there, and there's many more. So please check out your home country options available to you. Okay, so we've done enough talking, so we're going to pass it out to our panel discussion now, because we know that's what you're here for today. And we're going to kick off with topic number 1. So again, we've got our panelists that we introduced you to earlier on, who are going to answer the questions that have been submitted to us. So topic number 1, Vic, lead this discussion.
Okie dokie. So this topic is all about supervisor and getting your supervisor. We get a lot of questions from students asking about this all the time. So first of all, Joel, is it compulsory to confirm a supervisor before a student applies?
Generally, yes. You need to identify the supervisor such that the process can move forward, that we can acknowledge that you have found someone who's willing to take you on to mentor you in the research that you've chosen.
Okay. Jenny, how should a student approach yourself or other supervisors, other academics as a potential supervisor?
So I get a lot of emails from people interested in working in my lab, which is awesome. I'm super popular, I guess. No big deal. But generally, you know, step 1, and there are some very simple things you can do to begin with. Spell the person's name correctly. And you can say dear, you can say, you know, you can use your hello, whatever you want. Dear Dr. Yant, and just make sure it's spelled correctly. Next, you want to tell a little bit about, you give a brief bio about yourself, about your background, not too long. Nobody's, you know, you keep in mind that we get a lot of emails and you want us to be able to read to the end. So a couple of sentences about your background, maybe, and then a couple of sentences, and this is really important, about why you're interested in working with that person. What was it? You can say that you went to their website and it was interesting, but what aspect of their research did you find interesting? What area could you see yourself fitting into? And what is your timeline? And apply, you know, make sure you include your current CV with your email and yeah, but keep it short, keep it very to the point. If the person has availability, and they get to the end, they're going to email you and they're going to continue that conversation and ask for more. So you want to make sure that they get through all of it. And writing that email is tough. It's not a simple thing. I remember when I was applying for PhD, I went through multiple drafts of that email, and got lots of feedback on it before I was even ready to send it to the first person.
And we know that you're likely to apply to more than just Otago University, although I don't know why you would. So just be aware that those emails that do go out, they don't feel like a form letter that you're sending to all and sundry. So double check where you're sending it, and I know I've had some where I've said where the person has said I'd like to study at your University of such and such, and it's not Otago. So be quite accurate with those details.
And also, it's a research degree, so it's important to show in the email that you've done a little bit of research around the supervisor and their research. Does it actually match what you're doing? So always do a little bit more research than you think.
Okay. I know you guys get so many emails, and you were talking about that as well, Jenny. What happens if they don't? What's the timeline? What should they expect of hearing back from someone? And what happens if they don't hear back from a supervisor?
So do allow a bit of time, because we're all quite busy, and so we're not on top of our emails. So do allow a little bit of time. Sometimes what might be happening is that the person that you sent it to has actually forwarded it to other people in their department that may have capacity. So that may also cause some delay. So, it doesn't hurt to send a polite follow-up, but allow a good length of time, say, I don't know, 3 weeks. Would you say 3 to 4 weeks is probably appropriate? Certainly after only a week of not hearing anything, if you then send hey, what's going on? I haven't heard from you. It's likely to be like, okay, maybe we don't have capacity. So just be aware of that.
I mean, the other thing is, unfortunately, we can't take everyone. Sort of grades aside, we can only take a certain number of students per year. So in one situation, the lab might be full and we just simply don't have capacity to take any more. So be aware of that too, please.
I would also say, before you send that follow-up, and I get a lot of follow-up emails, and I appreciate them because it means that they're actually interested. But before you send that follow-up, take another look at that initial email. Was it very generic? Could you be more specific? Could you have tailored it a bit more? I'm not saying rewrite it, but have a think about what's in the email. Is that how you want to best represent yourself? And then send along that nudge. But yeah.
I sometimes tell students that think of it like a job interview and take your time, as you said, writing that cover letter. Maybe do you think maybe they could, because they're coming from a university, get academics or someone to critique it and have someone look at it before sending it out to you guys? Would that be helpful? Or
100%, yeah. So that's what I used to do, and I know that there are some of the scientific societies are now trying to set up support structures to help students with that. So if you don't have something like that at your university, expand a little bit to see if you can find a support unit that's out there to help with those letter writing, or just to ask people to give a read through. That's a really good idea.
referees really important?
Not in that initial email.
Further down the track, yeah.
And I would say don't send referees reports, send a name for a referee such that we can contact them independently. Because whilst we trust everyone that everything's above board, we don't necessarily know that they're written by that referee.
Just as you would for job applications. You contact them directly.
Great. Okay. So we've already sort of touched on this a bit about what you should include. I guess the one thing is, what would you value when you're considering a prospective candidate? I know you've talked about making sure you've done your research before, making sure the name is spelled correctly, because that's really important. I know, and for a lot of our students and markets, I know you may use different, you might be dear sir, dear madam. In New Zealand, we really do. We like to see a name because it's personalised, and that's the way that we work in this part of the world. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Academic transcript. I don't think we've talked about that, but certainly having your CV and an academic transcript as the bare minimum means that the supervisor can at least work out whether or not you even meet the minimum criteria.
I think also you're starting a conversation, so keep that in mind in the email. So I'd like to do some research in the area that you have expertise in, say it's infectious diseases. So I'm interested in your work in X, Y, and Z. As opposed to saying, I want to do some research with you. And it's like, my first reaction is why? What is it about my research that interests you? So you're starting that conversation. And trust me, researchers do like to talk about their research. So you start the conversation, then we'll keep going.
Yeah, I would, go ahead.
From a student's point of view as well, like I remember when I was applying for my PhD positions and stuff like that, I would read about their research on the website, but of course, like on the website, we don't have like a lot of information. So at least I would try, if I'm really, really passionate about that supervisor's research, I would try and read at least one of the papers that they have published. And I would approach them in a way, asking them like a question or like a doubt that I have with respect to the paper as well. So that would somehow like show the supervisor that I'm actually interested, and that would technically like even answer my question. So it would be more like as Joel mentioned, like more like initiating a conversation rather than a proper job application.
And show that you're capable of that research.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's nice to hear.
One of the things that we often do, so I have my own lab website, but then I also have information on the department page of what I do and my interests. And there's 2 points I want to make. First of all, that information isn't always up to date. So what you suggested by going and reading through some literature, my suggestion builds off of that, which is go to the Google Scholar and look at the most recent publications to see what that lab is currently doing. The second thing is oftentimes what we're encouraged to do on our websites is to highlight potential projects. And typically when I highlight potential projects in my lab, I'm highlighting those for master's students or prospective master's, honors, PG dip students. I'm expecting of PhD applicants to not necessarily say, I'd like to work on this one project that you've suggested on your website. I'm hoping for a PhD student to come in and say, I found this really interesting. I'd like to work in this space. It's a little bit of independence, a little bit of creativity, a little bit of your own initiative. Now, that's me though. I think there are other professors who do things differently. So don't panic too much about creating that narrative when you first submit that initial email. But you do want to make sure when I say that, have those couple of sentences of why you want to be there, make sure that it's personalized, it's honest, and it's what you actually want to do.
I have to agree with Jenny. Being a little bit broad of what's going on in the lab. So you've done the research about the lab, but also, at least in my mind, the perfect PhD student would come to you with a project that you might not be doing, but you'd be good to supervise.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's very student driven, but we have to be able to supervise that specifically. So we may not, but in those cases, we might be able to direct you.
Depending on where your passions are.
Yeah.
Cool. So part of also approaching you too is you want to see the proposal as well, and you touched on that too, and you've been giving tips. Expand on that, Joel, of how to make your research proposal stand out.
So you probably wouldn't start with a research proposal. A couple of sentences around the research that you'd be interested in doing. Supervisor might say, okay, we're not doing that project anymore, but we've got something that's been related. So we can work on that. And once you get the dialogue going, the research proposal would come from that. And I would help the student to develop that for the application itself.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So it's not an initial query, including the thesis proposal. It's more about finding out that supervisor and working out if you can actually develop something further from that.
And here, so if we're just looking at the topic, then okay, we're going to look at this disease and make some molecules there, or something different. The proposal itself comes with the application, and that develops over time.
Yep. Great. We get a lot of these questions as well all the time. So can I apply for a research position to work with one of Otago's academic staff? Jenny, how would you answer that one?
So you can apply for a research position to work with Otago's academic staff, full stop. That research that you get paid to do, though, is not supposed to be used as part of your PhD research thesis. The research that you conduct for your PhD should be unpaid unless you're getting a scholarship.
Yeah, perfect.
I'd agree.
Are scholarships important when you're looking at?
So I personally don't want my students to have to work full-time as a student, because I mean, doing a post-grad is hard. It's the hardest thing in your life. Doing a post-grad internationally is even harder. And doing a post-grad while you're also worried about finances is is mentally unstable. I don't think it's responsible. So personally, I prefer my students to come in with a scholarship because I don't want them to have that additional burden. But that's not a requirement. So generally what I do when I talk to the students as they approach me is we talk about the financial burden that will come with both moving overseas, living in Dunedin, as well as, being a student here. And the importance of that scholarship and the opportunities for temporary, for additional employment on top of that as well, which you can have. But because once, so we can agree that you'll be a student, but you won't know about that scholarship until after you apply. Now, you're welcome, if you don't get the scholarship, to still come to Otago, and I would still be your supervisor. But it's going to be a struggle.
So building on from that, essentially the admission process and the scholarships process sort of run independent of each other. And an admission can't be subject to them, subject to receiving a scholarship because, as we know, you could come self-funded. So the admission is dealt with separately. So it's more up to you to make that decision when you're coming. Can I actually afford to come here if I've been declined for a scholarship? Is there another way that I can do this and self-fund? And it is a good idea to be realistic about the costs involved.
And I do know others, so that I shared with you my philosophy, but I know other faculty who have the exact opposite philosophy as well. They want to make sure, so just make sure that the supervisor that you're thinking of working with is very clear with you about the financial opportunities if you don't get a scholarship.
I think too, a lot of students are mature and they bring families with them as well. So you've got those extra stresses too.
And finding, so I had a student who arrived here from Nigeria last year, and she was planning to bring her family over with her. And finding housing is complicated enough, especially in a new country. Finding housing for a four-person family was on a scholarship budget is difficult. So
the scholarship isn't designed to cover
the whole family.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Anybody else anything to add on this? No, we're all good. Excellent. So there are other ways that you can search opportunities as well, which are on our website. This is a snapshot of them here, and we'll touch on these when we talk a bit more in depth about our graduate research school as well. So again, media expertise database as well, but that doesn't necessarily showcase all the opportunities that are available. Okay, so we have already touched on scholarships. So again, very important topic that we get asked all the time about when we're offshore. So Bowman, on to hearing about what's the most important criteria for scholarships.
And essentially it is the GPA. So, what we're looking for in order to get into the PhD is a minimum of a B+. In order to be competitive enough for a scholarship, you're really looking to have a GPA of around about an 8. So an A GPA, A to A+. Unfortunately, we don't have a bucket of money to throw at it, so we are quite limited. Publications also come into it, so it depends on your overall experience is looked at. And then as far as the panel is concerned, we also look at the support that you have from your department and how your thesis topic's going to be strategically important for that particular department as well. And as I said before, the scholarships process and the admission process sort of run kind of in parallel. So you hear about your scholarship outcome. So at the moment they are quarterly. We've got a round that closed on the 1st of June. The decisions will be made by the end of June. So it's usually about a month. It takes about a month after the closing date. But you need to have a program offer in order to get that official outcome notification of the scholarship.
Fantastic. Okay, so another topic we have, if you've previously studied a master's by coursework, what should I do to be accepted into a PhD?
So a coursework master's is one that doesn't include a research component. So what we're looking for a PhD entry is that you've got a research component equivalent to 25% of a year's work. So if your master's is totally coursework without that research component, then the other ways of finding entry would be through research experience such as publications or even work experience. So if you've worked as a lecturer, something like that for a couple of years, then that could be a possibility as well. It may also depend on what you've done prior to that. So it might not just be your master's, it might be that you have a postgraduate honours qualification that could be used as an equivalence. If you don't meet the criteria, so if you do have a coursework master's and you don't have a research background, then the alternative is that you look at doing a research master's. And as mentioned before, there is that possibility of upgrading to a PhD when you're at least 8 months along the track. The downside to that is that is classed as international fees, unfortunately, rather than domestic.
Okay, and then Rakesh, a day in the life of a research student at Otago. Talk us through it.
Yeah, I think it's like very different for different research students. But overall, it's like, I think the best word that I can use to describe a day in the life of a research student, like specifically a PhD student, would be flexible. I think you can talk to your supervisor and decide on the time that you want to be in the lab. But usually it's like 9 to 5, at least for the first year, because that's when you need to interact with like your other lab members. You want to interact with your other supervisors. There's a lot of admin stuff. And also you're reading a lot of literature and stuff. But once you get into like lab work, you can talk to your supervisor and like plan on something. Like in my case, there were certain experiments that I had to do overnight. So I would come to the lab like later in the evening and work the whole night, and then maybe take the day off like in the morning and then come back at night. So you can just like talk through with that. And then each PhD student has like a specific office that you share with like other PhD students. So you have been given a system, like a laptop or a computer. So you can work on that anytime you want. You have access 24/7. So you can go to your office anytime and work at any moment. But initially it's usually 9 to 5, and then you can after 5 or like whenever you finish your work, you can just go back to your flat and then chill, have a good time. It's usually like that for like the first 2 years, and then it gets crazy. So it's fine, but
Crazy.
not to worry about. Like, but then you start like you're on the process and the mindset of finishing your PhD. So you start enjoying like your life becomes your lab or like your space wherever it is. But then it's all like flexible. It's all about time management. So you can just do the thing that's works well with you, as long as your supervisor and you are on the same page.
And of course, not everybody has lab-based research. And I guess there is a tendency to just stay at home and work on it. I would say, having seen and dealt with a number of students, especially international students, it is a good idea to actually come and be on campus and be involved and meet people. Isolation is really difficult. We've certainly seen an increase in issues of isolation since COVID sort of made us isolated. So it is really useful to actually make use of the facilities that are available to you.
The first year, the PhD students have to prove themselves still, don't they? It's not.
Yeah, so you're provisional for that first year. There's certain tasks that you need to meet. It might be that you need to do a literature review. You might need to do a presentation to a panel in your office, in your department, various different things before you become confirmed as a PhD student.
So usually there is like a first 6 months review meeting, and then there's a 1 year. That's when you get confirmed. Like that's when your committee, your supervisor committee and your PhD committee will have like a meeting with you where you have to present and submit a report of what you have done. over the period of 1 year. And also you have to have like a literature review ready as well. But again, that's like specific to different supervisors and departments. And that's when you more or less are like technically confirmed. And then you have meetings every year, which is also good because then your entire committee is also on the same page as you. And then there's like a clear idea of what you're doing and when you're doing. So it's very good to like plan ahead of time and like manage your time very well.
And building up that relationship with your
Yeah.
supervisor, definitely useful. I think, I don't know, from your perspective, normally it would be the weekly or fortnightly meetings that you'd have with your students, and take minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, the student, please take minutes during that so you know where you're at and what you're doing. But yeah, setting up those there's within your first 6 months, you also complete a student supervisor agreement, and that sets up those, those relationships. Who does what? Who takes the lead in certain areas?
Fantastic. So we've talked a lot about how to apply and what it looks like, but I think really what we excel at as Otago is the support that we have here. And again, that goes across New Zealand, but we have got phenomenal support for postgraduate research students. Again, Bronwyn is very big in this space, so we're going to pass it over to her to let you know what we've got at Otago.
Yeah, so I touched on it earlier about our completion rate. So the minimum completion time for a PhD is 3 years. So it's at that 3-year mark that you can actually submit your thesis. You've got up until 4 years before things start getting hairy, and our average submission is around the 3.4 mark. The sciences do tend to take that slightly longer than some of the other areas. But that is, and just keep in mind that the scholarship stipend is only for 3 years. So if you are going to take more than that 3 years to hand in, you may need to self-fund for some of that as well. Yeah.
Okay, so the Graduate Research School, so this is very much supporting that research at Otago, and the Graduate Wellbeing Coach.
Yeah, so within Graduate Research School, we have we're a very small team actually. We've got 2 half-time deans at the moment, and I'm the manager. We've got support available for Māori and Pacific Island students, but we've also got a Graduate Wellbeing Coach. We're actually really pretty chuffed actually to have this, because this is fairly unique to Otago to have a graduate wellbeing coach specifically for our graduate students. And yeah, I believe Jenny and Rakesh, you've actually had some dealings.
Yes, I feel like PhD is stressful. Like it is, like it's no joke. And there would come a time possibly in your PhD where you're like really stressed. And it's very normal, like every PhD goes through it. But what's interesting is like to have someone outside of your department and outside of your supervision, because at times you would like definitely feel like, or if I talk to my supervisor about my stress, I wouldn't want my supervisor to think that I'm not capable enough to do my PhD or finish my PhD. It's very understandable. So the graduate wellbeing coach comes to play there. They have no idea. They are not like directly related to you. So you can be like as free as you want, and you can talk to them about what you're going through and like how you can manage it better and whatever the problem is. I have used it like more than twice during my PhD, and I think like everyone should. Like even if you're having a good time, you can just go and talk to them of like how you're having a good time. It just gets better.
Everyone suffers from imposter syndrome at various different stages, don't they?
I was gonna just add to that real briefly. So you had mentioned about one of the things with being a PhD student is the flexibility. And I think that that's a really good skill to grow into, but it's a challenge. And the grad wellbeing coach can also help with time management. They can help with various other stressors that are coming in. They can also go in, I've talked to them too as the supervisor for my students might have been struggling. And so they might reach out to me, and they might reach out as a mediator with the supervisor. And speaking of mediators, there's also mediators available. If you do end up having any kind of issues with your supervisors, we try to set up a lot of different tiers of support so that if you're struggling to communicate with the person that you've come here to work with, we find ways to either fix that communication or get you somewhere that's more comfortable, more appropriate.
Okay, fantastic. Now, I'm conscious of time because we've only got 10 minutes left, so we're going to scoot through these
Yep.
fairly quickly. So there is lots of different external things available to you. So we'll just scoot through these, like I say, to get onto the other stuff. So we've got 3-minute thesis competitions. Most importantly, check out our graduate research school website. So much information is on there. The application process, how to find a supervisor. That is your key reference point for Otago. That will be able to help you. We have a fabulous higher education development centre, again, used by so many different students. Lots of different support there, external to your academic support as well as all the different workshop training opportunities and professional development that's there as well. And not forgetting our fabulous library services and resources for our postgraduate students. We have 7 university libraries on campus. They're specialised librarians, so they're there to help. Student support and services, the list goes on for support, and we also have a dedicated international student support team, that especially if you are thinking of coming with a family, it is a big step. There's a lot of factors to consider. We've touched on that briefly, but they can assist you there if you are choosing to come with a family, what you need to go through, etc., as well as visa support. And the joy of being a health sciences university is we have fantastic student health on campus, as well as a great hospital, etc. around us. And then last but not least, moving on to where would you live? What sort of prices and living costs? So Vic, do you want to talk a little bit about
Certainly.
Uniflats?
Yes, sure. So for postgraduate students, we've got Uniflats. So they are little houses, they aren't flats, and the university is your landlord. They manage them. They are all walking distance to and from the campus. They're fully furnished, and your weekly rent includes your utilities. So really the only extra expense is paying for food. We do have a small small number of housing for families. We have couples, but the majority of our housing, you'll be with other what we call flatmates, other students as well in that accommodation too. So you're cooking together, etc.
Yep. And then there's also private accommodation being in the city. Again, there can be some guidance on that. So please, if you're thinking of coming with a family, there are multiple steps involved there. So please bear that in mind. We touched on Uniflats. Again, tuition fees and cost of living. So if you're looking at doing a research master's, you can see the costs there. They do vary dependent on which division that you are in or department. New Zealand is very generous that our government subsidises our international students to pay domestic tuition fees. So you can see the range there again. And cost of living now, inflation is everywhere. New Zealand immigration will ask for $20,000 for your student visa. To be honest, it's probably more like 25 now to give you a good cost of living. And depending on where you're from and exchange rates, that will be affordable or not affordable, but it gives you a good idea of what it costs for you to live here. So we are nearly at the end today, and we've got a couple more minutes, and that we have got some questions that have come through that we could put out to the panel. So thank you for submitting them today. It's great to see so many of you online and who've stayed with us for our time. And we'll get through a couple of questions before we wrap it up at 5.
Okay. So the first one is, and this is open to all of you, is it compulsory to have a publication to be accepted into a PhD program?
No.
No.
Nice and easy. It's a no, people. A no. Oh, this is an interesting one. How are innovations and patents processed, and what is the share for the students in this process? Joel?
So, if my memory serves me correctly, as a student, you would start out and you own your own work. However, I asked my students if they'd like to offer their IP to the university, and in that scenario, the university would act on their behalf. So there's support there should something head towards commercialization, and I think it's a 1/3 1/3 split,
Okay.
but that's quite a while back
Right.
since I looked at that.
Mm.
So it'd be 1/3 to the university, 1/3 to the lab, and 1/3 to the inventors.
Okay, where can PhD students collect data for their research? Is it from New Zealand, or can it be from home countries or other countries? And will there be any funding for data collection?
So it can be from home countries. So in that 3-year period that your PhD is done in, you are able to spend up to 12 months offshore and still be classed as domestic rates, domestic fees. And that is usually for the purpose of research. So data gathering, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, absolutely, you could, you know, come here, do your research methodology and literature review, and then head off and collect your data offshore, and then come back and do the write-up effectively.
Okay.
As far as help and support for that, there are limited funds at the university, so it does depend on what sort of research funding is available in the department. It may be that you need to fund a lot of that yourself. Most departments would have funds up to $2,000 over the lifetime of your PhD to enable you to go to a conference. So there are some funds available, but you do need to be conscious that you may need to fund some of that yourself.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more question.
Maybe more. Someone was listening, and I've put the fear of God into them about that they can fail after 1 year of PhD. So what is the major cause of this problem? How can I not become like this? Jenny, any?
So I think it's communicate with your supervisor. Communicate with your supervisor, set goals. If you're struggling to meet those goals, communicate with your supervisor, and so that they can adjust goals, or we could find ways to make your situation more amenable to reaching your goals.
And it won't come as a surprise either, will it? Yeah.
No, and I was going to say that a research project can change as well.
Yeah.
So I mean that happens, and we deal with it.
Okay, nicely answered. Well, one more question.
Okie dokie. Are international PhD students, do they have the same access to university resources and facilities as domestic students?
Definitely.
100%.
Yes, they're an Otago student.
All right, awesome.
Fantastic.
Can we do one more, please?
Okay, one more. We've
Sarah,
got
come
3
on,
minutes.
come on. Okay. And this is, can PhD students take distance and hybrid options or study part-time?
So distance, effectively no. So if you're wanting to be offshore and you're an international student, you will be charged international fees. So if the research that you're doing doesn't require you to be here and you don't want to be here and you're happy to pay international level fees, which are similar to roughly 4 times the fees, the domestic rate, then that is okay as long as your supervisor is happy with that. Distance and part-time are harder for the supervisor to manage because you've got other aspects taking up your time. International students do need to be full-time. While they're writing up, they could potentially be part-time for that last part. If you are on a student visa and your course is supposed to be on campus in Dunedin, you can't then go to another part of the country because that would be in breach of a student visa. And the other one was the other part of that?
Part-time.
Hybrid. So our thesis is you don't do it by publications. We don't have that option of PhD by publication. So the hybrid is a term that is used where it might be that there are 4, let's say up to 4 publications that you've done, but they need to be cohesive. They can't just be 1 chapter, 2 chapter, 3 chapter. They need to be cohesive, so they're put together in a way that it runs as a thesis, if that makes sense.
Fantastic, thank you.
I also just want to add one thing real quickly. If you're interested in doing research in a different country, or if you're interested in any of these, any of these options, just make sure that's clear when you're when you're talking to that potential supervisor, because that supervisor might already be doing research in that country, might already have some funding available, or what might know of funding available or opportunities that are available. So again, it's about it's not as much about getting the the PhD and all of the details are important, but establishing that communication and making sure that you and the supervisor are always on that same page is really the key here.
Fantastic. So we're just about to wrap it up for today. Thank you so much for being with us for the hour, and I hope you found this incredibly informative. If you've got any further questions from a student's perspective, students who are currently studying PhD at Otago, we have a platform called UniBuddy where you can reach out to them and ask some further questions. And I hope you enjoyed today. So on behalf of all of our panelists, thank you. Please enjoy the recording. Good luck with finding your supervisor, and we wish you all the best. Thank you for joining us today.